Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to start by introducing you to this picture. It's a picture that you'll see very often over the next few weeks and months and years into what we're going to do into the next couple of years of your course. But today this is the parable of the sheep and the goats, and it refers to people being hungry and thirsty, and I'll explain that all to you a bit more detail probably in the next video. But today I just want to focus really on this part of the picture here. You can see a man helping another man who's obviously in prison. And it's a Christian belief. And Christians believe that when I was in prison, you visited me. And that leads us to the next part of what we're going to do over this video lesson. And looking at prison itself. And last lesson we looked at the aims of punishment. There's 6 different reasons why we punish people. And prison aims to actually fulfill those aims. It actually aims to fulfill and make people do those 6 things. So let's have a look. Prison tries to fulfill the aims of punishment. Let's have a look. Protection. Obviously aim to protect society from criminals, because those criminals are there. We need to be protected from them, especially if they're dangerous people. And of course there's retribution. Part of that is getting your own back and isolating people from family and friends. Obviously that's an important thing. And it stops the person from reoffending. That's a key one there. Again, linking into protection and other aims of punishment. Vindication. There has to be a punishment for the crime. Finally, it acts as a deterrent. Sorry, not finally, penultimately, acts as a deterrent. That's a really important one. People say, I don't want to commit a crime because I don't really want to go to prison because it's not very nice. You get very nice beds to sleep in, stuff like that here. You can look at all those kind of things. And finally, most importantly, probably, what the prison service tries to do, especially in the UK, the prison service tries to act to reform, to give people a chance to reform their character, a chance to become better people. And that's what the prisons try to do. However, the key thing is, do they do that? Now we're going to be looking at prison reform in a lot more detail in our next video in 3.4. But however, today I just want to really to focus on a few things, and I want you to really write these down in your notes. Prisons in the UK are often overcrowded, sometimes and quite frequently with inmates, people who are in the prison who are no danger to themselves, and more importantly, no danger to others. So part of those 6 aims of punishment, the idea of protection, is that absolutely necessary? Do we actually need that kind of thing? Second one, do jails work? Upon release, 61% of inmates reoffend within 1 year. Well, that hardly counts as reformation. If 61% of inmates reoffend within 1 year, they're not being reformed, they're just going straight back into prison. Now this is the key one. The average prison place costs £45,000 a year. That's on average. Much more than most people earn in 1 year, even more than I earn in 1 year. It costs to keep one person in prison. So this prisoner here, actually it costs him more to keep him in prison than it does to pay me, a teacher. Now, this is also a key one. Are prisons working? Nearly a quarter have severe learning difficulties. People in prison who have real learning problems. And another one, most women in prison have suffered either domestic or sexual abuse. What are we doing locking these people up? Possibly some people might say, when they actually have severe problems. What are the alternatives to prison? We're going to look at that very briefly now and actually say to ourselves, what actually are we doing here? And also thinking about what Christianity teaches about forgiveness, about the idea in getting involved in prison reform. So what are the alternatives to prison? Well, we've all seen it. Community service, different types of community service. Here you see some people cleaning up the graffiti, and it doesn't have to necessarily be that. It could be something as amazing as reading to elderly people. Elderly people often, like the fact that people come in and help them out and deal with them, especially if they're very sick. Might be helping a local charity, maybe cleaning up after things, or cleaning out certain areas for local charities, or doing different things like that. And drug alcohol counselling. Now, people often who commit crimes do so because of a deeper problem, because of an actual drug or an alcohol problem. So that's a good way of actually serving your time and doing a community service. Even sometimes gardening. You might see prisoners out there in the streets, actually picking up litter and maybe helping to keep things in gardening. Now, all of these, the community service, they're cheaper than keeping people in prison. They're often cheaper, and the key thing I think for religious believers is that people who actually have community service are far less likely to offend. And often if they're not a danger to themselves or to the public, then actually giving people an opportunity to do some community service is huge. Now, community service takes between 40 hours and 240 hours of paid work. You can actually charge someone with 240 hours of unpaid work, which is absolutely, quite a lot of time to actually pay back their services to the community. Other alternatives to a prison. You've got an electronic tag. You might know some famous footballers who've had to have an electronic tag because of various things that they've done and still play football. So people can actually continue in their jobs. And again, it's so much cheaper than prison. And if people keep to their promises and don't go to places where they promise not to go and have a curfew, so they have to be in at a certain time, it can be very cheap. Fines. Actually fine people for what they've done. Again, if people aren't a danger to themselves or to other people, then why do we lock them up? Why do we put them in prison? Is that an actual effective way of punishing them? And finally, probation. Now, this often happens when people have just left prison, and what will happen is they promise to do certain things. They promise to work with what's called a probation officer, and that probation officer will help them to reform and actually to come back into society and actually do things for the right reason, and actually aim to come back into society as a whole and become better people. Now, of course, prison is often very much seriously not the case for young offenders, for people your age and younger and slightly older than you, because young offenders are anybody who is 18 years or older, or younger, is considered as a young offender. So what do we do with people who offend who are not old? Well, most young offenders are tried at a youth court and often fined or given some kind of reparation, some kind of community service, clean up the mess that they've made. However, in some very small amount of cases, they can go to a young offenders institute and encouraged again to rehabilitate. And that's quite an important one for us to understand, actually, because with young offenders, it's really, really important that we don't lock them up and lock them away, and really try to give them the opportunity to turn their lives around, to make them realise that they've done wrong, and to do something with their lives that's better. Now, the key thing is this, though. Britain does have one of the highest rates of young offenders in Europe, and so it's quite a difficult problem for us in the UK. What do we do with young offenders to actually make them reform, to make them rehabilitate, to make them realise they've got something more to do with their lives? And it doesn't have to just do with 18-year-old people. It might have something to do with people who are older than 18, going up to 25 years old. They're still very, very young, and they've still got a lot of their life ahead of them. Now, religion and prison. A key thing here, we've got two religions. Muslims would definitely see the idea of a deterrent. Prison should be a deterrent. It should be something that makes people not want to go there, and not make people realise that they've done wrong, and actually make everybody else in society say, I don't want to go there. It's got to be something hard. Whereas Christians, we're going to look at next week. Next video lesson. You might look at it a bit sooner, but they actually believe in forgiveness and the idea that prison should be something that reforms and actually makes people better. And that begs the question, ladies and gentlemen: does prison work? Does prison reform people? I could go back to the slide that shows you that 61% of people who go into prison on average reoffend. So, is prison working? Does it do a good job? And is it effective for 20 whatever it is that you're watching this in? The answer to that question is, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think?